Des, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Good. Do you know something that's so weird seeing you here when I listen to you every morning? It's just now I'm actually sitting here and you're here.
Yeah.
I massively appreciate you giving up your time. I know you're a busy man.
No worries. A pleasure. Thank you for saying that.
I like to ask every guest I've got what they were like when they were younger. I mean, for your point of view, what was Des Clarke like at school? What were you like at high school?
What do you think I was like?
Cheeky chappy.
The opposite.
Really?
So quiet.
Right.
So quiet. I've got people that know me, that grew up with me, saying, I've no idea. Did someone quantum leap into your body? How did you end up doing this? I was the most shy, reserved, quiet, very nervous kid.
Right.
You know, sitting there with the glasses and the spots. And I had facial hair when I was really young as well. Quite a hairy guy. So people walk into the primary 2 class and thought that Johnny was sitting there. So this weird kind of shy, awkward kid, and but I always loved comedy, and that was the sort of background thing to it.
Right.
But I was very diligent. My mum sent me to school always with a pressed shirt, could smell the starch,
Nice.
and just learn to just behave and do your work, and that was it. That was me. Used to live in my own wee world a little bit. Had some friends, of course, but it was not the class clown. And it's quite a common story for comedians. I think they fall into those 2 camps. They were either the class clown or the weirdo that sat in the corner. So I'll let you judge what you think I was. But I was certainly, that was it. So then to do this as a career, massive, massive surprise.
Did you want to do it as a career at that point? Like, see, when you got to high school, what did you want to do?
I wasn't sure.
Right.
I always had a hankering for this. And my mate, a guy called Paul McGrotty,
Right.
I've got to give him credit because in first year of secondary school, high school, so I went to Holyrood Secondary, big school in the south side of Glasgow, and I'd hung about with him since primary school, and we used to do little funny voices to each other. You know, you make your pals laugh. So he entered us for the school talent show.
Right.
The embarrassment on my sister, who's 3 years older than me, saying, please, I'm in 4th year, Des, don't do this to me. You can't. I've just about got my credibility. I'm a teenage girl. You can't do this to me. So we did enter it, and we won it by doing little funny skits, comedy impressions of the teachers. You look back on it now, and you think, wow, what a moment that was. And to just have the balls or whatever it was to go for it. I still don't know what drove me to do that then, because obviously with this real shyness, I maybe needed somebody else to push me and say, look, we'll do it together. And because of that, we ended up doing it. And it was, looking back on it now, you think it was impressions. I remember doing Chris Eubank.
Right.
That one, can I just say that I am one of the greatest, such an honour to be on your podcast today. Like that. I mean, not great, right? But that's all you knew back then. So it was just famous people that were vaguely famous in the early to mid 90s. And that was it. The buzz I got from that, it was like a drug, and I was hooked.
Did you take confidence from that yourself as well, like going forward in school?
Massively. That helped me a lot. Came from a small primary school in Glasgow, south side, Gorbals, that's where I'm from. Go to Holyrood, which I think at that time maybe still is, was the biggest school
That's huge.
in the country, and I think not just Scotland, maybe the UK. So big environment, little fish out of water. Something like that helps you a lot with the confidence, the recognition. And I always credit stand-up for just giving me confidence in life.
Yeah.
The ability to go on a stage and take everything that's thrown at you and then to still emerge the other side, it made me a stronger person and more confident in like one-to-one situations as well.
That's what I was going to ask you. From having that shyness, I think doing stand-up would be my worst nightmare. Like, even just thinking about doing stand-up. But how did you get from that? Obviously, you're doing your talent shows and you're growing up and you're leaving school, etc. But how do you get to the point where you're comfortable standing up in front of a room and trying to joke?
You still don't get to that point.
Do you really?
Nah, you do. I certainly have, but it's not right away. And again, it was that little memory of doing the school talent shows and then being asked to host different things in the school, and you log it somewhere in your head. And I was aware, having had a chat with my old double act partner from school, that he wasn't going to take it on in that direction. So if I was going to do something like this, it would have to be on my own. And then it was Blackfriars. Right. If anybody knows that pub that's still there in the Merchant City of Glasgow, they still run gigs, and that was the scene of my very first gig. And in between that point, I'd done a comedy workshop with a brilliant stand-up in her own right, Viv G.
Right.
And she turned out some great people alongside. And I remember being in the class, and one of the other people was Des McLean, who's one of the most naturally funny folk I've ever met, and you ever will. And just as a teenager at that time, touching base with people that it didn't teach me to be a better comedian, but it showed me what the world was like. Meeting other funny, like-minded people, showing me the directions to go to get into stand-up. And that was probably the missing bit that took me from the kid that kind of thought he wanted to do it and loved watching Billy Connolly on the telly to actually getting the thought that I better do this.
Yeah.
And doing that first 5 minutes. I know you're talking about the nervousness. People that know me back then, I would be pacing up and down backstage. I'd almost wear a hole out in the carpet. And I'd be thinking about the gig all day until you got to that point. And then when you get a laugh, the euphoria is unbelievable.
Have you ever had like a shocker on stage at a
So
stand-up?
many. So many.
How do you recover for them? Because I think I've had a few comedians on, I always ask them about their first gig, but probably more importantly, that kind of bad gig, and how do you recover for that? Because that's worse than the nerves at the first point.
By far. Because now you've got a lived-in experience of, people hate me. I'm really bad at this. This was a mistake. Could have worked in a travel agent. So for me, and a lot of comedians might have a similar story. First gig was fine because you're all building towards it, and this is it. And first gig, I got away with it. And the adrenaline pulled me through.
Yep.
Second gig, whoa, not good. It was in a place called Bar 10 in Mitchell Lane. I don't know if it's still called that. It was daytime, and it was. I think I was playing to one guy in his Doug, and even the Doug wasn't laughing. So it was one of those things that I just wasn't ready for it, and it was a very open plan gig. No one paid to get in, and it's just that way of trying to figure out in your head. I said these jokes 5 days ago, and they got a laugh. And now they're not, and that still messes with your mind. And it's the ability to come back from that, because it hurts.
I can imagine.
There's no hiding place. It's not, and I've got lots of pals that are actors and musicians, and they say the same. They've got a script or a band or instruments, but when you're a stand-up, you feel like as an audience they've got to buy into you.
Yeah.
So if they don't like the show, they don't like you, or at least that's the way that you take it. And I think it was the idea of going back and doing it again. Maybe it was just a stubbornness that maybe quickly realise I must really want to do this.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times backstage we've looked at each other, fellow stand-ups going, why am I doing this? I don't need to be here. Most of us, when you start to have other full-time jobs, you go, I could be in... Well, I was stacking the shelves. I'm like, I could be in Quicksave right now. I could be selling beans for 3 pence.
Don't need the hassle.
I could have been a regional manager. That's the career I should have had. Shelf stacker of the year, right? And then you get on, and if it goes well, as I say, there's no other feeling like it, and you forget about the nerves.
How quick can you tell into a gig if the audience are buying into it? Because as you say, that's huge.
Yeah.
For party, but can you tell early doors?
Should be able to tell before you go on.
Right, okay.
Sometimes you can tell before you go on. Sometimes you get a feel for a gig. You can be wrong, but and if you're a stand-up going on and you've seen the compare, you can usually tell, that usually goes better. That was a bit flat. I mean, you can definitely be wrong, and then you'll know how to hit it. But yeah, and then when you get on stage, I think usually you can tell within the first minute, and then you realise, okay, if that's getting a laugh, we should be all right here. And as a comedian, you'll go, if the setup's getting a laugh, then the punchline should be all right. And then there's the other ones where you go, it's going to be a long night, guys. Going to speak really quickly. I might pretend to faint here. And it's what it is, you know. It's like anybody can have a bad day at work. It's just that ours is lived out in public.
And that's it. And I suppose now as well, it's recorded and put on social media, and you can't just go home and go, I'll chalk it up, don't need to worry about it.
No.
You get all the messages like, I've just seen this clip.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you've gone viral. Really? How many clicks? But the thing is, you almost then want it to go really badly so that it becomes a thing.
Yeah, true.
Like Larry Dean, who's another fantastic comedian, he had a viral clip where he had a heckler, and it was just so odd, and he dealt with it brilliantly that then becomes a thing. Yeah. So I should probably stage. The thing is, people don't have those spectacularly bad gigs. They just have those kind of quiet reflection on life gigs. You go, why am I doing this?
Don't need it anymore.
Don't need this anymore. Jack it in.
What's the best one you've done?
Best gig that I've done as an individual stand-up. Do you know what? I always go back to a gig that I did about 3 months in. And I thought, oh, I've got something here. And it was at Nice and Sleazy's.
Right.
And I had been struggling to do 5 minutes. And that night, it just all fell together. And I did about 13, 14 minutes. And at that time, that was long.
Right.
It was huge. And it was right before I was about to do an open mic competition at the Fringe.
Right.
And as a turning point gig, I felt that was pretty good. As a stand-up gig, I really enjoyed it. Been lucky enough to play a few theatres in my time. They're lovely gigs. It almost feels like the higher up you go in the pecking order, the easier the gig.
Right.
So those gigs where you're seeing the whites of the eyes and you're stood in the room of a pub, just being heckled by the noise of a puggy. That's a tougher gig than the King's Theatre or the Hydro. But yeah, as a turning point gig, I would probably say that was as a standout one. That was a big gig. And then I've been lucky enough. I've done like the Gotham Comedy Club in New York.
Nice.
And that was lovely because it felt like that, and playing those other gigs there, you felt like you're walking in the footsteps of the people whose faces you see going into the clubs. You're like, oh, Robin Williams has played here and Jerry Seinfeld. So, you know, that's hopefully a bit of their magical rub off in me.
Well, I suppose it's a circle for you as well, because if you watched like Conley as a youngster, then he was the kind of one of the first mainstream Scottish people to go to America and
amazing
break that kind of cycle, I suppose.
The comedy Beatles.
Aye.
In one bearded man. You're right, Gary. He broke America. He took that brand of humour all over the world. And I remember being on holiday with my sister in Australia, and by pure chance, we looked up the listings and Billy Connolly was playing the Sydney Opera House.
Right.
And we managed to get a ticket to go and see him. And I'm sitting there watching just an amazing experience with Connolly, talking about being a welder, talking about Partick and Drumchapel and Sucky Hall Street to thousands of people on the other side of the planet, not compromising, still doing what he's doing and showing that this sense of humour that we have here in Scotland can be relatable. And I just thought, wow, what an absolute legend. And he taking an our accent, what I'm lucky enough to do, and making it so global and so successful. That's why for me, he's always going to be the best. Yeah.
Was he a big influence on you, like growing up, like trying to get into that world?
Not style-wise, but in terms of just somebody that was really funny, of course. I just thought he was a guy that could make anything funny. I wouldn't watch a travel show about the Arctic, but put Conley in there with his bits hanging out, jumping about, and suddenly you're interested. Just a really brilliant communicator, a great speaker, and a fantastic stand-up. And he would do... I've seen him 3 times, and he wouldn't take a break. No interval.
Yeah, just go right through.
He's going on for 2 hours, 2 hours and 30 minutes. And even right up to the end, he would still do his show that way and be so engaging as a storyteller, spinning plates. And for me, that ability to hold an audience is tremendous. And that natural rhythm that he's got, which makes him a great storyteller, very Scotland, very Glasgow. So yeah, I mean, I think in terms of if there was the one that I think just sits above the rest, there's been great comedians over the years. For me, it's an obvious answer, but it is Connolly.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. So it's not enough that you do stand-up comedy. You then look at kind of the other things that you've done, presenting, radio, etc. I mean, I could put that down as a glutton for punishment.
Try to find one of them I'm good at.
Am I right in saying that you stepped into SMTV when Ant and Dec left?
That is true, yeah.
How terrifying is that?
Yeah, see, thinking about it now, I think, what the hell are you doing? Never fill that void. Yeah, so they had this search for presenters, and I was, I think, 21, just turning 22 at the time.
Right.
And I'd been doing some radio in Scotland. I'd done a year on Beat 106 on the breakfast show there as a co-host. I'd done my stand-up for a couple of years, and I was going okay.
Yeah.
I was getting gigs in the circuit, won a couple of open mic competitions. But then you're talking about SMTV, and that was the last golden era of Saturday morning telly. Yeah. And it was Ant and Dec, who are the greatest. Yeah. I think the greatest TV presenters I've ever produced. And they were so encouraging and so helpful. And I got this sort of audition, whatever it was, and the next thing I'm on the gig, and it was so quick from getting the chat about, do you want to do this? Can you do this? To you're starting in 2 weeks' time. I'm like, sorry, what? You've got to give me a bit of time here. You got to give me some preparation. But the lack of preparation was probably great for me.
Yeah.
because it was a 2-hour plus live show Saturday morning, millions of people watching, and you're following in their legacy. And they did everything, the skits, the sketches, straight up presenting, the interviews, all the little games, and you just had to be in there. I did that for just under a year. It was the final year of SMTV, and I had the honour of being the last ever presenter right towards the end. Jeez. And Tess Daly was in there, Brian Dowling, Kat Dealey, Steve Mulhern. I presented with all of those, and then Ant and Dec came back for like a final show, so I got to host a bit with them and various other great people guesting in the show over the years, and I just felt it was a pinch me moment.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, you're thinking about that kid who maybe a few years earlier was in school, shy, coming from a high-rise block of flats in the Gorbals. I didn't think this sort of career or these opportunities would ever happen for me, and it was such an honour, and I loved every minute of it. But the pressure to come in after Ant and Dec,
and on live TV as well.
On live TV, there's no hiding place. I mean, that's cancel culture happening right there. That is one false move and you're gone. But I was delighted. It was such a great opportunity and I loved it. And it set me up career-wise.
I was going to say that.
Never looked back.
Right out the comfort zone as well.
Completely.
Is that totally different? Obviously, radio is live as well, but you're in the studio and with your stand-up, you've got a routine. But when you're doing live TV, is that a totally different set of challenges for you to then try and get used to?
It's a lot. It's the skill set's different, and I think stand-up is as a pure art form. I think it's still the hardest,
right?
Just because of the pressure to get a laugh.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's greater than that in what I've done, the pressure to get a laugh, whereas in presenting, you can talk and it's more of a conversation, and I think as long as you're warm and you know what you're doing, you're all right. But for live TV, it was everything, because there was bits where you had to get a laugh, the timing of it as well, the earpiece, we'd no auto cue on SMTV. Jeez. We'd old style cue cards, so doing that for 2 hours with no auto cue, and you've got the thing in your ear, you've got to hit a break. We had to hit a weather bulletin at a certain time. The next show's coming on. It was unbelievable. And you're trying to move things on, and you've got, like, I don't know, Blue sat in front of you. You've got Duncan for Blues talking and somebody for S Club's running over, and you're doing a sketch, and you've just got to seamlessly try and pull it together. So respect to anyone that does that. But there's a buzz and an adrenaline about live TV that I don't think you can ever replace. Yeah. And as you rightly mentioned there, I've been lucky enough to do a lot of different things, and some of the skills are transferable. So I think you take a bit of everything, but the stand-up, the ability to cope under pressure, that I think is what set me up more than anything.
Jeez, I don't know if I could cope with one of them days. You're filing out all three.
Listen, you're saying that. Look at what you're doing right now.
I know, but I've not got like someone in my ear and Duncan for Blue running about in S Club 7 coming out of there. Like,
well, surprise, surprise. The guests are here. Please welcome.
And that would be the worry though, because I think if you're doing something like that, you just don't know what these acts are going to turn up and be like.
No, and on Saturday morning, I don't think they'll forgive me for saying a lot of them were hungover.
Aye.
You know, you've got boy bands, girl bands, and pop stars and actors, people that had probably been out the night before, probably gigging somewhere, and they're having to get on set with us at sort of 6 or 7 in the morning and learn a full sketch from start to finish, do an interview and then a game of wonky donkey. So all of that was happening. It was just a fun time. I think it was great for kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's missing from the schedules at the moment.
100%.
Mainstream television, BBC One, ITV, having live Saturday morning TV. Yeah. I love a cookery programme, but there's only so many ways you can teach somebody to make a waffle. Yeah. And I'm going, what about the kids of today? They're having to go and search for that content.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's a way to do it, because certainly we were told about our audience, it was 50% kids, 50% adults.
Well, a lot of kids, when you were that age, you planned your weekend round.
Yeah. Saturday
morning TV, be it you had SMTV, you had Live and Kicking, you had loads of different ones. It was like all 3 hours of gold.
Exactly. For some people it was Dick and Dom, for some people it was Swap Shop. If you're a bit older, going Live and Kicking. All of these things were great. They defined a generation, and they gave that almost like event television. Like when you watch Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway, they openly admit they took bits of what SMTV was and just put it on in the evening. And it feels like it was great for kids. It was a great breeding ground for presenters as well. And it would be nice if they would find a way to. I almost thought, well, why not put the first hour live on your main BBC One, then say catch the rest of it on the digital channel.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a way to try and do it, but I just thought it was an iconic thing to be part of, and we'd no idea at the time that would probably be the last generation of that sort of mainstream TV doing Saturday morning telly. But it was brilliant.
What was the biggest learning you took from it?
Oh, what was the big? I can't. There's a few. I think it's preparation. I think for something like that, you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And people will see me. I'm quite a good note taker and trying not to leave anything to chance and always backing yourself.
Aye.
You've got to trust yourself in that moment and be prepared for anything to go wrong and keep the heat, as we always say. And don't lose it, because anything can go wrong.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple of million people watching and you're live, and you always back yourself to say, look, I've got this opportunity. This is why I'm here. I'm sure football players that play in the academy, they end up getting the first team game. They're so nervous. But you've only got there because you've done the prep and you're considered good enough to do it. So, yeah, that would be the main thing. There's probably little technical things you could take from it. And I would definitely have an auto cue if I could. I think looking at cue cards felt even then a bit 1950s. I know, exactly. And you had to look for what was good about it. You knew it was your line because it was written in a certain pen colour. So, God, Des, you're blue, and it would be like Cat would be red and Tess would be green or whatever. And you'd have to look for your line.
Right.
But you always help each other out. I think in that there's a team environment.
Yeah.
And that also came through in the it's not just about you. It never can be. So that's why I think it's made me a better host.
Yeah.
Because you're there for the guests. You're making the experience better for them. If they look good, you look good. The same with your fellow presenters. It's all about being aware of what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Knowing when to step forward, knowing when to step back. So I think that's helped me when then it's come on to do other shows like, you know, the Heart Breakfast Show or Breaking the News, for example, knowing how to try and be the conductor in the middle.
Yeah.
And when it's your time to step up, or also just let it be.
Well, you done it at the Commonwealth Games as well, didn't you? And I mean, in your own country, that's a huge pressure.
That was a massive honour.
That's a pinch me moment right there.
Yeah, that's the biggest TV broadcast that's ever come out of Scotland, and they couldn't find anybody better than me. Lorraine Kelly must have been busy. I don't know what happened that day. Yeah, that was phenomenal how that all happened, because I knew I'd got the gig for doing the pre-show for the opening ceremony.
Yep.
And that was to go on stage at 14 minutes past 8, which was 2014.
Yep.
To do this build-up show and get the crowd going, which was phenomenal. And we would have people from all over the world, and a dancing tea cake and Scotty dogs. All of that madness was happening. Sun was shining. And then whilst in the preparation for that, the organisers asked for my availability for the closing ceremony.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, I'm free. Double bubble.
Aye.
They like what I'm doing.
Whatever it is, cancel.
Got to get another gig for this. Thank you very much. And I thought, was it the same role? You want me to do the warm-up, which would be filmed in-house but not put out on national TV.
Yeah.
Then they showed me a storyboard for how they wanted it to look. And they said, we want it to have a music festival feel, be a celebration, Hampden Park, 50,000 in the arena. And they said, we estimate 1 billion will watch this. Usually the closing ceremony gets even more viewers than the opening. And it was the way with the London Olympics. Oh, this looks amazing. And they were storyboarding and showing me how they'd done it. Like they got the little images, and it was tense, and it was Usain Bolt, and it was Lulu, and it was Kylie Minogue. And then there was a guy that they had in the middle of it holding a mic in his hand that looked a bit like me. And I was like, oh, this is quite good. And then they said, yeah, we intend that to be you. Usually a show like this, you either have about 10 hosts or you have none. But we think we like what you're doing. It was this company, it's a kind of global production company, and we like you to be the guy in the middle, just being the link man. And I thank God I was wearing brown pants that day, I'll tell you. Gary, when they told it to me, I couldn't say no. And then I had to keep it secret, like what the plans were for it. And then that was it from...
Billion people.
Billion people, yeah. And again, no auto cue.
Oh,
no auto cue. These little handheld cue cards, but I didn't want to be looking down. So I just had to memorise it. So whatever I came out with was...
How was the nerves?
Unbelievable. The worst. Like, there's no... People can give you bravado and say, I was fine with it. I was bricking it. Because this now, like, so unlike SMTV, now social media was a thing.
Yeah.
So it's 2014, one of the biggest years in Scotland's history. And I'm stood there after this massively successful games. Nothing had gone wrong. There's the mic. And I'm like, why are you doing this? I'm the last guy that can mess this up. And yeah, I was nervous. I was excited, but proud as well.
Definitely.
You know, to be there at Hampden Park, your national stadium, having had such a successful games, and you'd been the guy to kick it off, and now you were the guy to close it up. And I was welling up at the end. You can see that. I introduced Caledonia, the song, and I'm just...
Many times would you get to do things like that? Do you know, even with the viewers watching, a sold out Hampden.
It's never going to happen again. It's never. I have no sporting ability. I'm never going to play Hampden in any other way other than with a mic in my hand. But the ability to do that, and then to have my family in the crowd watching, to have 50,000 people and know that so many are watching at home as well, that type of event of that size and stature, is it going to come to Scotland again? I don't know. Maybe it would have to be the Olympics probably, because I don't think even the Commonwealth Games have quite got the status that they had before. So I just knew at that time I had to go for it. Try not to swear. Try not to fall over. It's always that voice in your head. What if I just said Jobby?
but even at that though, you must sit after that and be like, I was kicking about the Gorbals, a wee guy.
Correct.
And now I'm going out to broadcasting to 1 billion people. Absolutely.
I was a snotty-nosed kid running about the Gorbals. Yeah, it feels just like that was no time at all from that to being there. And it's just great. It was so nice to get that. I mean, a company that were like a worldwide company that saw me and thought, you're the guy. We think you represent modern Scotland, you represent Glasgow, and we like what you do, and we think you can get from A to B with a mic in your hand. So they gave me the opportunity to do that, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I've always had that thing of, I don't know where I heard this, but stop and smell the roses.
Yeah.
So while it's happening, enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I was very conscious to take it in as it was happening. And I've tried to do that with all the things that I've done, to just remember where I am and try and take that picture in your head. And that was what that was that night, just being aware of it.
Yeah.
And just enjoying every minute of it.
Have you had, after that, have you had recognition, like when you've been on holiday or anything? Have you had people remember you from? Because you'd be getting watched in places that ordinarily wouldn't be listening to the radio in Scotland or wouldn't be watching national programmes, but that's global.
I went to Australia and did comedy soon after that.
Right.
And that was where I felt a fellow Commonwealth country, and they had done well that year.
Yeah.
So that was probably a big help to me. It's like a currency. So it's very big in certain countries to give what TV shows you've been on. And I was lucky enough to do a few gigs in New York, and they all had their TV credits and the build up to it. But I mean, what can you say? They're all like, having been seen in David Letterman and The Tonight Show, and then you go, this guy's been on Reporting Scotland. Please welcome. Yeah, what does that mean to anybody? So when you go abroad, you need something to say, here's a show recognisably that I've been on, and it did help there. Definitely. And it was
I'd take that over Letterman any day.
Well, you know, it's a decent little gig, and that helps then when you go and do gigs in those parts of the world, especially at that time, Commonwealth countries, within a few months or a year or so of when it happened. And it was just an amazing achievement.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that will be on a bucket list that I never knew that I would have had. That sits there as something that I was so proud of, to get the opportunity to do it and not to mess it up. I felt like that was a big responsibility.
Definitely.
Carrying the nation on my shoulders that night.
No pressure.
None at all.
Jeez.
Yeah. But then you come out of that the other side and
survive
you're back doing a pub gig a couple of nights later at the State Bar in Glasgow, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
That's who you are, and it's all work. No job too big, no job too small.
No, that's it.
My dad was a brickie. He had that same motto.
Pay the bills.
Pays the bills. It gets you out there, and you just learn to love what you're doing.
What about, I'm always curious when people are on, it's great to talk about the high points and the really feel good moments, but if you had points where something's not worked out as well for you, you've had a kind of low point within your career, and how do you navigate that side of things? Because there's probably, in the areas you work in, radio, comedy, etc., you're not always guaranteed work, you're not always guaranteed jobs to come in, but from your personally, have you had anything that's been a real...
So many, absolutely, yeah. And people don't see it, and you don't, and maybe it's the background, you don't want to be the sob story because everyone has got their own problems, especially when you choose to be in entertainment as a career. People genuinely maybe don't have as much sympathy for you. But yeah, I mean, I certainly, post SMTV, it was a great gig, but I only got to do it for just under a year. Yeah. And nothing to do with me, it was just a shake-up. It had run for quite a long time. That goes, and then I leave the Beat 106 breakfast show, and I go to London for 3 years, and I try and ply my trade down there as a stand-up, picking up some TV gigs here and there, but I felt so lonely. Yeah. And I fell out of love with stand-up for a bit, and it just felt like I was on that hamster wheel of a circuit that every stand-up gets at some point in their career, I think, and I certainly had it, and I just felt very down, doubted myself, the old insecurities coming back out. You remember as a kid, insecure, anxiety, feeling like I'm not good enough. Yeah. That always is in the back of the mind, the slight imposter syndrome. Yeah. And that was at the stage where I thought I might give this up. I might, it just wasn't for me. Just wasn't doing it. And maybe another bad gig, or feeling like you're getting lost in the shuffle. Remembering you were on this network TV show 2 or 3 years beforehand, and not thinking you're going to get any other opportunities, and thinking, oh, did I make the right decision leaving Scotland? Because at that time, people were saying, oh, you need to be in London. Yeah. We're not seeing you. You're not here for all these opportunities. And I just felt very lonely.
Homesick as well? Were you?
Completely homesick. Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every stereotype in the book that you think you're not going to fall into. But I was completely homesick. I missed everything. I missed my family. I missed living in Scotland, especially Glasgow. And I felt like I'd lost control of my career. And that was a tough moment. And you have those moments where you're just in another bed and breakfast in some random town, and you're trying to work with this stand-up set that you're not sure if it's quite where you want it to be. You're not maybe getting the other opportunities. And then it was actually radio that pulled me back up the road to Scotland. It was at that time XFM Scotland was the franchise that they had in the Central Belt, and I joined that, and that then later very quickly became Galaxy, that then became Capital in Scotland. So that was my journey back into radio at that point. And when Galaxy was the rebrand, I got the breakfast show, and I felt that gave me a bit of structure. Yeah. And I didn't realise that I'd be missing that. And without that, I felt just lost as a person.
And had you, at that point, was comedy on the back burner for you when the radio then came, or were you just trying to see where you went at that point, given how you'd felt?
I was. It's a bit of both, and this is where I got a career, and I think you've mentioned it, and others have. You've always got loads of things going on. I think that's because if I just focus on one thing, knowing me and the way I am, I'll get sick of it. Yeah. I'll get bored of it. I'll get frustrated about it. What's nice is I can pick that up, and then pick that. Yeah. As long as I feel like I'm being me in all the things that I do, I'll go for it. And with comedy, at times I feel like I disrespected it because I felt so frustrated by it, because I felt I know I can do better than this. Then when the radio comes, and that's quite a demanding thing, especially breakfast show, your comedy is something that you go, I do that now and again, and you go with the radio because it's solid. Having that gig 5 days a week helps you get a mortgage.
Well, that's it,
You know, going in with your freelancer. No, definitely. I made £173 at that gig. Mate, come on. Geez a house. So it's harder. You've got to prioritise where you are. And I've always kept stand up there. I've never completely let it go. But I know that there have been times where other things are just more immediate and more time consuming. So it's harder to fit in the stand up gigs. Yeah. But I think certainly coming back to Scotland allowed me to do a more balanced life and to do more different things. But that time in London made me much tighter as a comedian, much more disciplined in my timings, and I trimmed all the fat. Like I felt like as a gigging comedian, I was much more efficient, if you want to look at that and get into the technical side of comedy, because that's where I felt London was. You were doing multiple gigs per night.
Yeah.
Everybody's hit rate on the laughs was really high, and I felt I can't just meander into this and stumble and mumble and hope for the best. So it made me a better comedian, but I think it took me down a darker road as a person. So I was glad to be back in Scotland.
Yeah. And I suppose it maybe in a roundabout way, it gave you a longer period in comedy to go back and enjoy it, because the radio then came and it gave you something else to go and focus on and
gave me a release.
Yeah, that's it. And I suppose if you, as you said there, and I get the same way, like I like to have 6 or 7 things going on in the background, because I think if you do focus on the one, you become so self-critical and fed up.
Yeah.
It then starts to lose interest that it had at points.
You do. I totally agree. And that's the one time that I can think in my career where I thought I'm really losing interest in this whole thing. You know, I was less than 10 years into it and I thought, did I maybe have a brilliant first 3 or 4 years and then I've now had this little struggle? And it was the first time where I looked at my diary and there was nothing really exciting in it. There was nothing happening in it. Whereas any other times, even though one thing goes, you've always got this.
Yeah.
That show didn't come back. Oh, but that one's there. Or that gig didn't come back, but I've got that here or that there. And it was at that one time period that I thought, I don't think I've got anything here. It was, you know, and you're just, you're doing some random, nice shows, but you're doing some random kids telly on, I don't know what digital channel they were on. Might have been OnlyFans, but you're just turning up going, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to be the best that I can be, and that's always that way. Whatever it is at whatever level, just give it plenty, and something will happen. And again, it's coming back to that lesson early on of believing in yourself. I'm here for a reason. The reason why I was chosen for that must have been that I was good at my job. So hopefully, if I just keep grafting, it'll get there. And the idea of, as you say, having these different things to work on means that you can get excited about things again, because you're putting it up and then you're putting it down and then you're bringing in something else. So it keeps it interesting.
How confident were you coming back up the road to do radio? Because obviously being in that situation and your confidence does take a knock, but if you've got the chance to come home, you've got the chance to work on a new show, how are you feeling at that point?
Yeah, probably knocked. My confidence was knocked at that point, and feeling like, can I still do this?
Yeah.
And it's been a while. It had now been a few years since I'd done a radio show, and I didn't know. There's you give the outward opinion and the outward impression maybe that everything's great because you're a performer, and you have to do that, or I certainly feel like I have to do that, especially at breakfast. You want to be upbeat, and which I am generally, but at that point, of course, your confidence is knocked. I didn't come into this with any showbiz background in my family. Came from absolute nowhere. No one to turn to. Nobody asked the advice. Nobody to give me a leg up into the industry. It was just off you go and discover the journey for yourself. So when you hit those moments, you maybe regress into that kid that's not confident, doesn't believe in himself, doesn't think he should be here. So it was a big learning curve for me again to relearn the skills, and it made me a much better presenter. Much better. I don't know if it was just desperation on needing to make it work, thinking, hang on, I need to go again here. This isn't easy, you know. And it was maybe just the idea of knowing that it had to happen that I think it made me focus a bit better. And luckily, one thing led to another, and it felt like I was back doing what I was doing, and I was better than I was before. But and I think you appreciate it more.
Definitely.
If you know, it's never all plain sailing. As you say, as a comedian, you die so many times, and I think even in this business, career-wise, there's so many things you don't control. So opportunities that you thought might happen, you know, it maybe doesn't happen the way you think you did, but you've just got to keep going.
And see what comes up.
And just see what comes up. Keep working away, and it will happen. So,
how tough a gig is the breakfast show? Because we get a lot of people messaging the page, and they want to be involved in that industry. And the people I've had on, like Amy, Emma, etc., they all say people vastly underestimate the work that goes in behind the scenes, and the times you've got to be in there for, the preparation, and obviously the breakfast show, you're getting up at stupid o'clock to go in and film and record. But for your point of view, how tough is it? Because people will only see Des is on this show, it's brilliant, it's got loads of listeners. They don't see the work.
No, they don't.
That has to go in to get
Not
to that
at all.
point. But from your point of view, how demanding
It's demanding on your time, it is. You know, you're getting up at, well, I guess it's a 5 a.m. alarm call for me, which isn't too bad. But you feel like it's like Mark Wahlberg. He gets up and does about 100 press-ups at that time, has a smoothie, and then off we go. Whereas I'm going in and going, right, where's the can of Iron Brew? What time's this show starting? Here we go. How are the roads looking? But I actually love it as a lifestyle.
Right.
Some people like it, some people don't, and I get that. But getting up at back at 5, in the studio for 6, on air at 6:30, away we go. We're done by 10, but then there's a preparation that's happening after the show to get you ready for the next day. So I can give you a peek behind the curtain. Before I came here, you can see there might be some clay in my hands because I've been filming a segment for the breakfast show where it's me trying to make pottery in a potter's wheel. It was like the weirdest, creepiest remake of Ghost that you've ever seen in your life. And that's just for one segment.
Right.
But we will make that be a part of the show, and it will just be myself and Jennifer, Rioch, who I co-present with, will often be in for hours after that show, recording bits, getting guests in, doing segments, recording phone calls, because our availability at 6:30 is great for us, but not always for the guests that you want to get in the show. So they might come in and say, actually, can you do something a little bit later? And even while the show is going on, you are so wired for the whole show, because obviously running the desk, I am plugged into every bit of production, every song, every jingle, every sweeper, every travel bulletin. You're across everything. But when you get used to what that is, and you can drive the desk and drive the show, it's the best place to be in.
Right.
It just feels like you're so plugged into everything. You're wired. And most people, you want to do all your business at 10:05. Who wants to have a meeting? Who wants to go for a drink? Like, calm down, it's a Tuesday morning. Right? But that for me is a great way to start the day.
Yeah.
And the messages we get from people, and have done historically, saying, thank you so much for being there in the morning. It's like you're my pal. The recognition you get in the street. It is a hard discipline. It's hard hours.
Yeah.
It's super intense, more intense than any other radio show, and I've been about the schedule. But we've got a great team, and if you buy into it, the rewards are fantastic.
Yeah.
And you get to do more. You get more great experiences in your life on a breakfast show than you will in any other show. So I think for me, as somebody that's always loved all parts of this business, including radio, it's the dream gig.
Yeah.
And it's the prime time of radio, and it's where you want to be. And I've been lucky enough for most of my career, I've been in and about the breakfast show.
How important is it to have, obviously you do it with Jennifer just now, how important is it to have that good relationship? Because you two have got really good chemistry.
Yeah.
And you can tell when you're listening to the show, it's natural, you both bounce off each other.
Yeah.
There's no awkwardness
There's
or
no
anything.
pause.
But did you know each other beforehand, or?
I and no, yes,
Right.
I had. We'd known each other just around, because everybody in Scotland knows each other, and around the circuit. And she was a finalist in Miss World.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I was gutted I missed out that year, Gary. I still want a steward's inquiry, VAR. So from that was her launch pad. For me, it was stand up. We get into the business in different ways, and we end up kind of in the same circles, working with each other. And then we presented a few of these big charity events together and the corporate events, and that was it.
Yeah.
Always got on well and knew each other. And then when it came to the big switch in Scottish radio a few years ago, for our parent company, Global, they changed Capital and they changed Heart.
Yeah.
And they took away the breakfast shows and just had local drive time shows. So then they said to me if it was all right to switch from one to the other. So I then let the other presenters know what was happening, because you don't want them finding out in a press release.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to be upfront, transparent about it, and say, look, I've lost my job here, but they're giving me a job there. If that impacts you, just to let you know as a heads up. I think I appreciated that. So I was then left in, and they said, we'll work around your schedule with other things that you've been going on, and we're going to give you a co-host.
Right.
And Jennifer was daft enough to say, yeah, I'll do that. And again, you know, she was in a position where she'd had an experience at STV where she had a show, and that was taken from her. So we both come from different places of a regular thing we'd done that had been taken from us. And then we got put together, and instantly, day one.
Yeah.
Demo one. Usually you have to demo for so long before, you put together like these pilots, you get one that's right.
Yep.
And we demoed the first one, and the guy listening down south went, yeah, that, if you were doing the show for about a year, I would expect it to be at that point, and that was your first demo. So it was obviously two people that knew what they were doing, that had known each other and could work with each other, and again, were desperate for work. No, no, desperation does funny things. I put the des into desperation, remember that? And it was just natural. It was easy. It was really easy. And being on drive time was a nice shift to another part of the schedule. I'd only briefly been there before. And it was really interesting when we had the pandemic, because drive time became the slot to be on, because the daily briefings would happen just before you came on air.
Right.
So you would then have all the most up-to-date news. People were getting up much later. So the listening habits and patterns changed. Yeah. And then we were able to keep that show going. All other parts of my career disappeared. Yeah. The only thing that stayed was that show. Yeah. And myself and Jen, it allowed us to build our chemistry and build a following with the audience, which a few years later, then we're able to transfer onto breakfast. So it worked well. And I agree. I think I can tell when people are faking it and it's not quite working on a double header. Yeah. And I can tell when it's real. And I think if you're going to do it for a sustained period of time, it has to work. And for us, I think we're now around about 5 years in. Jeez. So that's a good long stint.
It's a relationship.
It's certainly it's longer than some of mine, mate. That is a relationship. That is like having, it's a relationship. People have described it as it's like sharing a cell with somebody. Yeah. It's like, it's friendships don't last as long as that. And it is. And you see more of them than often you'll see of your partner. Yeah. You don't sit and look at your partner and talk to them intently for 3.5 to 4, maybe 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And to have that, that's more intense than you would if you were just sat looking at your partner like that. You'd be getting the sort of the red flag, the creepy alarm would go off.
What's wrong with you?
I want to talk to you every 3 minutes after Rihanna. I want to talk to you about topical events and the travel and the weather. It's weird, but it works. Yeah, I think we both get it, and it's just a nice, easy working relationship. I think when you have that, it's a good place to be in. It doesn't always happen, so take it when it comes your way.
Both morning people?
Definitely. Aye. No, not a chance. She hates the mornings. By her own admission, she said, "What? Why did you not warn me about this? I tried." No, I'm a morning person. Right. She's not.
Right, okay.
But again, yin and yang in radio works. Yeah. Like if the two people on the show are totally the same in things, it's not going to work. And she loves the show, but she said, can people not have breakfast a bit later in the day? What about 11 o'clock? A brunch show? So that's why it works.
But I think that's why people enjoy it as well, though, because when you're sitting, and I have it on when I'm driving at the office, it's like listening to two pals just in a living room chatting about whatever's on their mind. And I think in Scotland, probably Glasgow as well, people relate to that far more, because you'll be sitting going, I never actually thought of that.
I never thought of that, aye. That's right, yeah. And you think that hopefully some voice in the show represents what you're thinking. Yeah. And that's what we've always tried to do, and certainly what I've tried to do in radio. I first came into radio as a total novice. Yeah. Again, I was 21 years old, Beat 106, breakfast show co-hosting with Heather Sutty, somebody who, again, I'd just met at the demo. Hello, how you doing? Never done a bit of radio in my life. I think I'd been interviewed in the radio and that was it. And then you have to get fast-tracked into this kind of fake it till you make it, which I think is a motto for my career, just to be like, here's how you do it. You get a bit of coaching, and in our industry, it's a wee bit like sport in certain ways, where you have hopefully some natural ability, but you can be coached. And certainly with the radio, there's so many technical elements to that. And I was the co-presenter on the show. I wasn't allowed anywhere near the desk. At that stage, I was just, hopefully trying to be funny.
Look but don't touch.
Look but don't touch. A phrase that's been said to me many times in my life. And that's all I did, and just, you learn. Yeah. You try and take it in. You try and become better at what you do and hope that by the end of the experience that you are a better presenter or performer than you were before, and hopefully that you can raise up the people around you as well, because again, as I've always said, you're trying to make them look good. When they look and feel good, so will you, and the overall product's better. And you get these little coaching tips, one of which is be conversational, like what we're doing here. There's a part where the awareness certainly for me has gone that we're on a mic with a camera.
Yeah.
And you're brilliant at that. And I've watched a few of your podcasts, and I think you're very good at doing this because you make it conversational.
Yeah.
And it's great to do that in the podcast world. It's a long form way to do it. We just need to do it under a bit of time pressure with music and other elements of the show running in the background. But if you can create that, people love you for it. Because even if you get something wrong, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're real, you're authentic.
It's relevant because we all get stuff wrong.
Oh my God. If you listen to my show, I'm a shambles at times. Beyond not faultless. You know what I mean? You play the wrong thing and you do this. But the thing is, it's that thing we talked about. Don't panic.
Yeah.
Be real. Be in the moment and just appreciate that nobody's perfect. And just back yourself.
And I think it's interesting you were saying about the picking up the coaching tips and things, because you've obviously went through that phase of people showing you the ropes and teaching you the different ways on radio, but I have had guests on this show who have sung your praises for then doing that for them.
Ah, that's nice.
Coming through as well, because I had Amy was really complimentary about you and obviously helping her in the show and being in the position of not knowing everything and you're kind of learning as you go, but that must be good for you to hear that kind of full circle.
Yeah.
You've been in and learned it, but then you're showing other people that journey
Passing
as well.
my bad habits on to the next generation. No, but that's kind of you to say that, because that's part of it.
Yeah.
Because there maybe are some people in whatever job you're in, don't help other people.
Yeah.
Let them figure out for themselves. Maybe shut the door behind them. But for me, if somebody's willing to learn, somebody wants to do whatever it is, whether it be the comedy or TV or radio, if you can help them, you always will. You'll try and make them better and try and improve them. The more good people we have doing this kind of gig, the better that it is. Amy's a great example of someone that came from a different world, journalism, TV, into radio, a lot of different disciplines and how you do it. And you've got to have somebody that's willing to learn and you try and help as many of those people as you can. I've tried to do it in stand-up as well, where I can give that advice. And we've had a lot of interns pass through radio, and it's so nice when they'll then give you a shout at some point, because that's all you can do. You can only try and help others because you remember how you felt at that time when you were in that position. You can give a bit back, then it means you're doing it right.
Totally agree. That's a difficult question.
Go for it.
Who do you think's had the biggest impact on your career?
The biggest impact in my career? That's interesting. Are you talking about... What is it? I suppose that's an open question. Yeah,
could be from advice you've had for someone, or someone you've looked up to when you've been doing it, or somebody you use as a sounding board, or...
It's really interesting. I'm trying to think of, is there anyone that I've got as a mentor? Probably never had a mentor. And I can give you the obvious answers about my family. Yeah. Which I will, which is great. And my mum, my dad, especially my mum, would say, I have no idea what you're doing. But you seem to know what you're doing. So I'm giving you the backing to keep doing it. Because I was at uni. Right. I was at university and I was at Glasgow Uni, but I knew it wasn't for me. I was studying film and TV with English lit and politics, just because I thought they sounded vaguely media-like. Don't know why. I don't know what I was going to become there. But whilst doing that, obviously I developed the idea of doing stand-up, picking it back up from what I'd had at school, and that support of taking a year out from uni. It's been a hell of a long year out, Gary, I'm not going to lie. Don't think I'm going to go back. But she allowed me to say, look, you know what you're doing and I trust you. You're not a daft boy. You've obviously made a decision and this is the right path for you. So obviously that's the right answer. In terms of who you learn from, you know, who you work with, and I don't know. I mean, I pick up probably stuff that I don't even realise from other people that I've worked with. I remember there was a program controller called Mike Cass, who I learned a lot from early on in my career. I thought he was very good, an ex-presenter, and he's very high up in radio at the moment. I think he's with Virgin, but he's worked all over. Really interesting side story about him. Fellow stand-up comedian Robin Granger did a show at the Fringe a couple of years ago, very famously, that only got one audience member at it. And that audience member was Mike Cass,
Right.
who was my old radio boss that had just come to the Fringe from down south. I think he was just looking to see a few shows. And then I'd heard about it, got Robin on my talk show the next day. I was doing a talk show at the Fringe.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this experience. And then from the back of the room said, "It's me, Mike." I thought I'd got a Ouija board out. "I'm your one audience member." And I was like, "Hang on, are you the guy that I know?" He said, "Yeah." And he then championed Robin and helped him in his career. And I thought, there's someone that's in a very lofty position, but has never forgotten about where he came from. So it was really interesting watching that from a production point of view. Great producers are amazing, and you learn so much from them, and you respect them. And I've been lucky enough to work with a few. In terms of fellow stand-ups, I remember seeing a really formative gig by Tommy Tiernan. Do you know Tommy Tiernan? Irish comedian.
Yeah, he's in Derry Girls.
Oh, amazing. Brilliant in that. Fantastic stand-up. And I remember watching him. Again, I don't know Tommy that well. I've just gigged with him a couple of times, but I watched him at the Fringe at Late and Live, the most notorious stand-up gig in the world.
Right.
It's just a heckle fest. It's on at 1 a.m, and it's part of the fabric of the Edinburgh Fringe. This was the old building in Cowgate, so we're talking at least 20 years ago, and everybody was just dying. People were getting glasses thrown at them, and I'm stood in the crowd saying, "I don't want to do this as a job. I want to go back to stacking shelves. I was good at putting the shampoo out." Tommy Tiernan walks on, and he just stood a little bit away from the mic and started talking, telling this whimsical tale about growing up in Ireland and all the chat. And then it started to die down, and it started to die down. And within about a minute, he had the audience in the palm of his hand. Didn't try to go at them. Didn't try to berate them. Just stood there and said, "I'm doing this, and if you're coming on board with me, I'm not going to change who I am." That was utter self-belief, and he was brilliant. And he then went on to do 20 minutes of just genius, and he got a standing ovation at a comedy gig, which is very rare, at Late and Live. So I think in terms of that would be people that I watched growing up, great stand-ups. There's many that I could list. And seeing Kevin Bridges and watching what he's done, he was always great. And seeing the impact that these had, almost like a modern day Billy Connolly, to use that Glasgow vernacular, that Glasgow accent, and make a huge impact, do what he's done, and still be such a humble and decent guy. So I think that gives the rest of us hope that,
Agreed.
Wow, it doesn't matter where you come from, that shouldn't hold you back. If you've got the talent, you can do it.
Agreed.
But in terms of impact, work ethic definitely comes from the family. As I say, it was my mum and dad worked hard on the family business, which was bricky, being a labourer. And I've been out in the sites a few times, but really, it wasn't for me. I was not the most practical with my hands. I don't think I could line up a wall straight if you gave me a spirit level and 14 guys with rulers. But again, the work ethic. Getting out, getting up early, grafting, that probably teaches you what you should be doing in life. Whatever job it is, same principles apply. So that probably had the biggest impact on me as a person. And the way that I work, people often say, "You work so hard." And I probably do, but for me, this is normal.
You don't notice it.
Don't notice it. Don't notice it. Multiple things going on, and I feel happy with that. Because I still, have time to chill.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because from the point of view, you're unique in the situation that you've done TV, you've done radio, you've done comedy, but from an advice perspective, what would you say to people 16, 17, making their first strides into whatever one of those three, based on your experiences? What would you say from an advice point of view?
The obvious answer I give is don't be afraid to fail. Because fear of failure holds so many people back, and it has done for me at times. But the one way that I had to get over that was stand-up, which is, there's no two ways about it. A lot of stand-ups, we'll convince ourselves afterwards, I kept going, all right. What, when no one laughed and they shouted at you repeatedly and you get booed off stage? Aye, but before that, there was one guy in the front row, I think he smiled.
There was a moment,
and it was a moment. It was a brief moment. It was in my head, but it was a moment. So I think, don't be afraid to fail. I think that's an obvious answer. And, treat the knockbacks as learning experiences. And all of those things do apply. And go for it. You can procrastinate, you can allow things to hold you back. I would just do it. It's the old thing about, don't need to get it right, just get it written. So keep writing, or whatever it is your type of creative industry is. Don't be afraid to fail, and just keep moving forward. Somebody told me, do at least one thing every day that improves your career or that improves you or gets you towards your goal. Now, a lot of people will have these, is it manifesting?
Yeah.
I didn't realise, like a lot of comedians do that. A lot of comedians will picture the gig before
beforehand.
they do it. Of course they will. And it's imagery, it's picture painting, it's manifesting, it's got different names. But if you can do that with your life and with your career, it might happen for you.
Yeah.
It might feel like then when you get to that moment, right, this was meant to be.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to have that, the hope and the drive, and just keep going. If it's really for you, just keep going and don't let the knockbacks throw you off course.
Yeah.
Find another route, find another avenue. And if it was me, it would be try and do as many things as possible so that if you're really, really bad at one of them, then something else will happen for you. If you're just persistent, be a pest. That's what I'm trying to say. And then ultimately it will get there for you. Keep grafting.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Is that it?
That is you.
That feels like it was...
That was over an hour.
You're kidding me on.
That's over an hour.
By the way, I could make that a fringe show. That was really, really good. You're very good at this.
I'm very good. You're very good at it.
Yeah.
Very good at it.
And thank you for committing to doing a 5-minute comedy spot and allowing me to train you for it. Who knew?
It'd just be 5 minutes of me crying, to be fair. That might be a niche.
I've seen worse, by the way.
That might be a niche.
That would get an award at the fringe. What a pleasure.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you, Gary.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Brilliant.